Hi, I'm Heather Jo Flores, and today's video is about why friendships and relationships are the most important part of permaculture, activism, entrepreneurism, and being a writer. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about this because a lot of times, okay, let's start with permaculture. People think that permaculture is organic gardening, basically, and that is part of permaculture, but you can have an organic garden and you can have a composting toilet and you can have a Hugelkultur and you can have some solar panels, and that is not a permaculture. It becomes permaculture when those things come into relationship with each other. When you create a whole system design that connects each element to the next relative to the function and location of that element. So those are relationships. And then of course you're not going to live there by yourself. You can't just be one sustainable human out in the middle of nowhere. It's basically not possible, and it's not very much fun. So your relationships with other people are going to be the best part about it, and they're going to be the worst part about it. You know, I've witnessed a lot of permaculture projects in my day. I've done a lot of traveling. I've visited a lot of sites, interacted with a lot of communities, and the number one reason that projects fail is because the relationships between the humans involved are not attended to. And so that's another reason why relationships, and particularly friendships, are the most important part of a successful permaculture design. And I say friendships because, you know, lately there's a lot of discussion around allies. What's an ally? Or are you my ally? If you're my ally, I expect you to act like this. I expect you to believe like this. I expect you not to say these words. I expect you to say these other words. But then we have friends in our lives, and we sort of cut them some more slack because we already know that they're our allies. We already know that they're on our team. If it's a true friend. I'm not talking about frenemies or fake friends. I'm talking about real friendships, people who you value deeply in your life. And of course, these are the people that you want to do permaculture with. These are the people you want on your project. These are the people you want to do business with. These are the people you want to share your stories with. These are the people you want to do activist work with. I'm not saying to create a bubble, but I am saying to do projects with your friends and become friends with the people that you do projects with. Because if you're interacting with people that you wouldn't want for friends, then why are you interacting with them? Just being an ally is really not enough. And you know, you don't have to be everybody's ally. And you don't have to be everybody's friend. If we stick with relationships that are actually sincere, then we can streamline our work and make it much more effective. And it's very common in the permaculture community for people to try to do everything and try to please everyone, and everyone's a generalist, and as a result, a lot of people aren't really being very effective, and we're all just sort of talking about the same things again and again, and not necessarily moving forward as a movement. And I believe that one of the keys to this is if we start to connect more deeply as individuals with less people in a more specific, focused, friendship-based organizing structure. So that's what I'm teaching about in one of the classes of the Find Your Niche course, and this video is part of one of those classes, and I'm also making it with the intention of sharing it publicly because it's such an important topic. So friendships in activism. You know, I've done a lot of activism, and I've done a lot of activism for a cause that I felt needed attention, but I was working with people I didn't really feel that deep of a connection with. And I can tell you from personal experience with myself and having seen it with other people that if your activism is only meaningful if you really deeply feel it and connect with it emotionally, and if you really deeply feel and connect emotionally with the people that you're working with. Otherwise, you're heading straight for burnout and despair, and then you're never going to do activism again because you're going to be so frustrated and damaged from the experience. So again, you don't have to be friends with everyone, and you don't have to pursue every cause, but if you want to do activist work, to look to the problems of the friends that you have. What is oppressing them? What is oppressing you? Let your activism start there, because then we constantly find that motivation. We want to go to the event. We want to go to the fundraiser or to the protest because our friends are going and it's fun to hang out with them. And not saying that it's always going to be comfortable, because social change is not always comfortable, and revolution is certainly not comfortable. But if you're surrounded by the people that you deeply love, if you're going to get stuck somewhere in a cataclysmic situation, then at least you're going to be surrounded by the people that you love. And the joy that comes from surrounding yourself with people who are your friends, with people you're in good relationship with, people that you're willing to work through the hard parts of the relationship with because you deeply value those people, then the joy that comes from that experience is the insulator. The joy insulates us from depression, burnout, and despair. So this is much more than I can really get deeply into in a short video, but these are ideas, these are things that I strongly believe, and I just want to put them out there. You know, your friends and family are what really matters. They're what matters to you. So if you focus your work, your artwork, your writing, your activist work, your permaculture work, if your friends and family are your target audience, and I'm not talking about those toxic members of your family either, you don't have to talk to them. You're under no obligation to talk to them. I'm talking about the people you really deeply care about. If you let that emotional connection be your compass, then you are going to find joy in your work. You know, your friends and family won't be your only audience, but if you're in a place where you are still trying to find your niche, which is what this course that I'm teaching is about, then your friends and family are going to be a really great place to start. You're going to talk to them. You're going to look at what they care about. You're going to think about the problems. They're always telling you about their problems. So what of those problems are you compelled to help them solve? Not that you have to fix everyone, but is there a certain problem that you're compelled to use your creative energy and your skill set to help people solve? Because that's what finding a niche is about. We each occupy a tiny space that we become an expert at solving problems that occur from that space. So, you know, and as a writer, there's an old saying, write what you know. And, you know, of course, there's lots of arguments for writing about stuff you don't know and expanding your mind. However, if you're starting out, and I'm not just starting out, but I'm always falling back on write what you know, because really you're never going to run out of it. I tell you what, if you spend your whole life writing what you know and you finally got it all down, you told your whole story, you wrote out all your skills, you got it all down, and you run out, kudos. Then start writing what you don't know. But as a daily practice to write what you know, there is so much there, so much really good stuff for you. People that you know make wonderful characters in your books. Places that you've been to give you an opportunity to create an authentic setting. Experiences that you yourself have had, and you can combine experiences and put them into one character, or break them up and put them into a bunch of different characters. Write what you know. And again, this comes back to friendships and relationships. And the more those extra charged ones. So now let's talk for a second about the difficult relationships, the people that you don't really consider your friends, and those family members you don't want to talk to anymore. As a writer, there's a lot of really good juice there. So allowing that trigger and anxiety and fear to be a compass can be really useful. It also can shut you down. So be careful of that, because sometimes writing about experiences that are really difficult will stall us out as writers, and then we just won't write anything for months because we re-traumatized ourselves. So you have to decide for yourself to sort of strike a balance. And you know, I'm presenting this little lecture right now as trying to communicate with a few different types of people, because that's who I have in my classes. So, you know, take what's useful for you and, you know, ditch the rest. No big deal. So write what you know, focus on your friends, and try to help them solve problems. And, you know, you can always learn new skills, of course. And a lot of times it's easier to learn a new skill that you can use to contribute to a community that you love being in. It's easier to do that than to go to a community that you think you want to be in, you think you're going to love being in, but you don't have skills that can contribute to that community. I didn't really say that right. It's if you're in a community you don't like being in, and you're surrounded by people you don't like, but the skills that you have are working for you. So, for example, if you live in a town that you hate because that's where your job is and that's what you know how to do, but you don't really have any good relationships there, then then that's going to lead to despair and depression. I bet you're not very happy if you're in that situation. However, if you remove yourself and you place yourself into a situation where you are surrounded by people that inspire you, but you don't really know where to begin with how to contribute to that community, it is easier to learn those skills so that you can reinvent yourself and be a functional part of that community than it is to get over the despair and depression in the other situation. I hope that makes sense. So I've learned that from personal experience that if you can challenge yourself and you can learn new skills as needed to occupy a niche in a place where you feel safe, you love the weather, you love the people, you feel like this is your tribe. And then from there you figure out how to integrate and become useful. So, either be useful where you are or go somewhere that you're useful. But no matter what, that joy has to be the base because life is very short. And it's way too short to waste your time trying to solve problems for people that you don't like. And it's up to you. You don't have to like everybody. It's a really common thing in like the leftist, liberal, egalitarian, anarchist, activist, permaculture community that everybody has to be nice to everybody. Everybody has to like everybody. And I do think it's important to be kind, if possible, and to be civil, but you do not have to like everybody. You get to choose who inspires you. You get to choose who you spend your time with, and you can only spend your time with so many people. So choose carefully and let that be authentic to you, and then that authenticity will bleed out. So this is what I'm trying to say here. And if you don't need to learn new skills and you can channel your current passions into solving problems for people that you care about and obtain a yield from that energy, that's ideal. That's your niche. That's the least change for the greatest effect, speaking in permaculture terms. So think about this stuff and resist the urge to try to please everybody. It's impossible to do. And I think that most of us have had the experience that when you really try to please everyone, what ends up happening is that you just piss everybody off. So focus on those friendships. Find out how you can more deeply be present and more authentically serve the people you really deeply love. And finding your niche and filling a void will come from there. Okay, so that's enough for today. And I hope you all have a great rest of the week, and I'll talk to you soon.